Like,
sorry, with a slight delay.
okay. So this is our agenda for today. We'll start off with small opening remarks from our chair and myself. And this is our annual general meeting. So we are going to report on some of the results from the prior year, 2024. We have an annual report that's available on the website. And then we'll talk about some of the financial reports in there in operation achievements, and also talk about some priorities we have for the current year, 2020, 2025. I also have with us today our Director of Finance and Minutes, Tay Kim, and our Director of Programs and Services, that's Kelly Bitternose, who will also be part of today's presentation. And then I'll wrap it up with a short presentation on our plans for the future at the First Nation Market Housing Fund and open up to question and answer. Just to thank everyone for joining us. I know this is a virtual and in person, so we have some people here in Ottawa at the offices of Assemblée First Nation. I'd like to thank AFN for allowing us to use their space for our first annual general meeting. And with that, I'll turn it over to our chair for some opening remarks.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to acknowledge everyone that's here, our trustees, our staff, our partners, and of course, the general public, whoever is interested. So we have people online, and we also have a couple of guests here in the room that I want to acknowledge. And for me, this is our first AGM, so I really want to acknowledge the leadership. I want to acknowledge our former chair, our CEO, for really advancing a lot of the vision and the goals that have come from the trustees over the years to get us to this point today. And what the AGM really is about accountability to community. And this is what we've talked about for many years is having that accountability to the people and telling them what we're doing. What is this fund doing, and how is it benefiting the people on the ground? And that's really what we're trying to do. So Travis is gonna talk more about the details of the work. So I'm not going to speak too much about that. I just want to acknowledge that 2025 really is a key pivotal point for us as a fund. Because we are working on a business case to transfer the fund to First Nations control, and we do have the support from the chiefs of the Assembly of First Nations to do that. And it's been a work in progress for many years, as you know. But for us, there's kind of 5 really important things. The first being self-determination, and anytime we do this kind of work, it's always about First Nations people. Being the ones to set the direction and to make the decisions. And that hasn't happened in a lot of sectors for a long time. And I know that when I came on, I was one of the first Indigenous First Nations trustees that had come on to the Board of Trustees. And at that time, the organization was working on making the whole Board of Trustees First Nations people. And then that transition happened, and that's when I joined. And that was in 2020, I think. I think it's 2020, but the fund existed since 2008. And so in my mind, I was like, really, it took 12 years for you to think that it might be good to have First Nations people leading this? Anyways, we're here now. And in the last 5 years, we've been able to attract the most intelligent, fiercest First Nations people in housing, finance, investment. I think our board is just exceptional, and I'm really proud of the board because when when one group shines, if our board stands out, if our organization stands out, that is a win for all of our communities. For First Nations people to be in these leadership positions and to be running an organization like this that does exceptional work. So kudos to all the staff. I think that's something that our people can be proud of. And so with that, I just want to thank you for all being here today in our first AGM, and I'll hand it over to our CEO.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that. So welcome everybody to our first annual general meeting. My name is Travis Seymour. I'm the CEO of the Market Housing Fund. All right. So hopefully I can talk better now. So I'm Mohawk. I'm from the Mohawk territory of Akwesasne. I'm a Wolf clan. And I'm also an accountant. So I've kind of worked in both worlds, both streams, I guess. I saw an opportunity to work with the fund several years ago and the potential of the Market Housing Fund to make a difference in First Nation communities. Because when I returned to my community, there wasn't a lot there for me to, as far as accessing a mortgage or get a loan to build a house in my community. So ultimately I had to buy a property off reserve. So I have lived experience, which is what the Market Housing Fund was designed to solve that issue, to make it more feasible for people like me to return back to their communities and to build a house and to move back. So the mandate of the fund is to promote and facilitate the uptake of homeownership for interested and eligible First Nation individuals across Canada. It was supported by initial federal investment of $300 million to operate under an indenture of trust and also a funding agreement with Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. The fund uses the trust monies as backstop. The backstop approved loan guarantees. Those guarantees are made by First Nations that opt into working with this program and to provide a sustainable stream of income annually dedicated to our exclusive nationwide mandate to establish pathways and build capacity and conditions that will support homeownership programs in First Nation communities. What we've established since inception in 2008, which is when we were founded, was working with about 41% of all the First Nations in Canada and putting in place what's called credit enhancement facilities in partnership with lenders and First Nations worth over $1 billion of a potential credit enhancement facility. If fully utilized, it would result in over 7,000 fund-backed housing loans. The issue that we've seen, though, is the uptake of that facility. Only 627 actual fund-backed loans are in place, even though you could have up to 7,000. So there's still a lot of work to do in communities to encourage members to apply for housing loans or to be aware of housing programs and to make those types of programs successful. There's a lot of work that can be done. So we have two programs we offer at the fund, our credit enhancement program, and we also offer a capacity development program, which we are very well known for. For example, a credit capacity development program, we will help a community set up a home ownership policy or matrimonial real property law or do lot surveys. They made a commitment that they want a home ownership program. So we support them with some capacity development resources to pay for the advisors and consultants that they rely on to help them get that work done. So over the past 7 years, we identified that a lot more could be done with the fund. What holds us back is the rules and regulations under indenture of trust, which are the rules that were established by the Government of Canada. The two departments that we work under are Department of Housing and Infrastructure and Indigenous Services Canada. So they set the policy around this credit enhancement facility and working with First Nations. And then we have our own board of trustees who oversee the organization. Over the last 7 years, we've done several engagement sessions with community. They've told us what the issues are with our program, the changes that they want us to make, but we are limited in the changes because of that indenture of trust, and because any changes we wish to make usually require a minister to approve the changes, even though it's minor or administrative. So what we've run into is kind of a brick wall, and we see the real benefit of transferring this to First Nations, First Nation control, accountability of First Nations, so that First Nations can make sure that this organization has the flexibility to respond to the unique housing needs across Canada and to really make homeownership a successful program. So this is our first AGM. Typically, an organization such as ours, we're a not-for-profit trust. Usually an AGM will take place after the financial audit is complete and an annual report is produced. So our year end is December 31st, and our audits are finalized in late February and approved by our board in March. Following that, we work on producing our annual report, which is approved by the minister. So our plans for the next AGM will be in the middle of 2026 to report on all the activities in the current year, 2025. So please watch for notices and invitations to the next AGM, which will be mid-year. And following that, we'll have regular AGMs June or July of every year. We'll have a firm date for that. So with that, my next slide, I wanted to speak to some of the accomplishments of the fund. So as an organization, we deliver our legacy programs, which are called the Credit Enhancement and Capacity Development Program. At the same time, we're planning for the future. So we do a lot of work to help us build that business case for the transfer of the fund to First Nation control. So there's two types of work that we do on a regular basis. In our accomplishments for 2024, we highlight what we've done to move further along in the transfer work that we contemplate. So on here on accomplishments in 2024, it's the formation of a working committee to work on that business case for the transfer. And what we did in 2024 is we hired a specialist consultant that has expertise in transfer of organizations to First Nation control. And we also set up a working committee, including representation from AFN, Assembly First Nation, from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and from Indigenous Services Canada, to look at what are the real obstacles for the fund to move forward, and what are the elements of our indenture of trust and funding agreement that are presenting us from really making the changes that need to be made. So it's a very worthwhile exercise. We identified, I think, 30 areas that we wanted to change. Some of those changes can be done with the approval of just the Minister of CMHC, but some of them would require the approval of Cabinet and even Prime Minister. So there is a lot of controls involved in making changes at the fund. In addition to forming that working committee, we also work with AFN to get their support. For many years, AFN has passed resolutions to the government in support of transferring the fund to First Nation control. So we went back to AFN to ask them to recommit their support for the transfer of the fund. Their advice to us was at that point to undertake a series of regional engagement sessions across Canada. So we did that. We commenced virtual and in-person engagement sessions across Canada to get the views of First Nations on transferring the fund to First Nation control, and also to get their views on establishing a membership program. Because one of our ideas is that after transfer of fund to First Nation controls happens, you will see more events like this, like an annual general meeting, and you will see more members, a membership program where you have individuals who benefit from their involvement with the Market Housing Fund, and also a vested interest in seeing that this organization succeeds and responds to the needs of communities. A third accomplishment in 2024 was formation of more alliances with like-minded organizations. We acknowledge that for many years, the fund did not have enough linkages with other organizations in First Nations, in housing, and that since 2008, some excellent organizations have evolved and matured, and it was a good time for us to form partnerships with different groups. One example that stands out is the First Nation Housing Professionals Association, which has the mandate of supporting capacity development and training for housing professionals. I was just there last week. We're a co-sponsor of their national conference. It's in Saskatoon. So it's an important linkage with us because we want to make sure there's no duplication of effort between us and other organizations. So we collaborate and we form MOU agreements with these organizations to make sure that we are working in tandem and not in competition or duplication of other groups. Because ultimately, our organization with these other groups want to see the same things. We want to see healthy, thriving First Nation communities. For 2025, every year we revisit our strategic plan and put it into our business plan is what it's called. But we do have a planning session every year. And this year in 2025, which we're now coming to the end of, our priorities this year was First Nation engagement, which is usually a priority every year, is to make sure that we are well connected with communities. And so one of the tactics we use to stay connected through engagement is to have a high visibility at First Nation events and conferences, to listen to the First Nations we serve, to be at the right place at the right time, and to engage with community. At the same time, in 2025, we wrapped up a series of virtual engagement sessions, which were very well attended. And we're hearing from a lot of young people about their interest in homeownership. And so we really strongly believe that demand is out there. It's one of the biggest obstacles is just lack of information and knowledge about how to become a homeowner. So that's one area that we strive to improve, is getting information to that audience of what's possible with homeownership. We want that leads into the second priority, supporting greater understanding of homeownership. In 2022, we did a national survey, and this was one of the top obstacles was people just didn't know what was possible for their community, within their community. And so I think that's something that as an organization that has a strong social media marketing platform that we can do something about, and we are doing something about it, is that we strive to get the information out to the people that are looking for it. The third priority for 2025 is to prepare for the fund's self-determination. That's the business case for the transfer of care and control of the Market Housing Fund, the First Nation control, and to move away from the colonialized way that this organization was established, and to remove those strings policy strings that bind us from making change, real positive change. The fourth one is to build on the strategic alliances that were established over the last couple of years and actually look at action plans for what are we going to do with housing professionals. We also have alliances with Land Advisory Board and Financial Management Board. And there's another organization, Yanochia Housing Finance. So that's my tribal council. Kelly Bitternoes is going to speak more of those strategic alliances later on in this presentation. And then the fifth area as a strategic priority was to research, innovate, and advocate. And under that banner, we actively undertake research projects to make sure that when we invest in capacity development, And we offer programs that are backed up by studies and research. So in 2024, we had Conference Board of Canada present to us their findings from a research study on how effective is the market housing fund in actually resulting in home ownership and houses getting built, and what could we do differently. So we always look for ways to be innovative, because when you're working with First Nations, trying to attract lenders or trying to set up a homeownership program, you have to be innovative because of the Indian Act obstacles, which does not result in a level playing field with off-reserve real estate. And then the third area is advocate. So when we hear of an innovative idea or a good idea, we support those ideas with real support. Our board of trustees are very in favor of seeing creative ideas. This is one of the reasons we're working with Land Advisory Board on study on 8A leasing and leasehold lending. Is that a potential future pathway to homeownership that should be more promoted more and educated more? We're looking at ways to make that a more successful program. So with that, that's just an update on our accomplishments that are featured in the annual report. And you'll hear more about the activities of the current year in next June, July, for the next AGM. So I'm going to turn it over now to Takim, who's going to walk us through some of the financial highlights set in the annual report.
Okay, thanks, Travis. Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Takim, Director of Finance. I just want to just quickly mention that that the fund began as a small organization where CMHC was both funder and management. And since then, we've moved away from that arrangement and built up internal capacity here. And just recently this year, although it's not part of 2024, we received the FMB certification on financial management systems and performance for not-for-profit organizations. So second one in Canada to receive this certification. And I think that's also good support on the fund's transition into being a autonomous organization. So with that said, I just want to go over the 2024 annual report that we posted online. Next slide. So like Travis mentioned, that we are a not-for-profit trust established by indenture of trust and a funding agreement. So the initial 300 million that's invested through, it was invested in a bond ladder portfolio, very simple nature. But since then, our portfolio grew. It is managed professionally. We have our advisors and managers that guide us in our investment policies and practices. So currently, as of 2024, we were invested in equities, commercial mortgages, real estate, and infrastructure. The 300 million grew to about 400 million. Generating about 12 million annually for our expenses while backstopping our guarantees. We do have an annual CD budget that is currently tied to our net income from the previous years. So this is something that we want to work on as part of the transfer, is to remove that the formula where it caps us on the ability to fund our CD initiatives. Next slide. So our board of directors, the trustees, we have 9 individuals on the board. As you can see, the 9 trustees form 4 different committees: audit and risk, investment, governance and HR, and operations. We do have another a nominating committee every now and then to ensure that there's continuity in trustees. Most meetings occur virtually. We do have a couple of meetings in person, such as this one, the AGM, and the year-end trustee meeting. as well as the April strategic planning. For 2024, our total trustee governance expenditures were $152,000. You can go to the next slide. So this is the asset side of our balance sheet. Total assets, 399, almost 4 million. Our portfolio consists of, as I mentioned, cash, short-term investments, bonds, Canadian equities, global equities, and commercial mortgages. So we're still heavily invested in bonds, but we are trying to diversify more and include real estate and infrastructure that's currently in process right now. We do anticipate that for 2026, we'll be invested in real estate infrastructure. We move on to the next slide. So this would be our revenue and expenses. So you can see that investment income, we normally earn about 13 to 14 million per year. Cash flow, we do incur some trading activities, gain or loss on trading activities. In 2023, we had some large rebalancing activity. So that's why you see about 3 million losses on the sale of our investments. But that doesn't occur normally. So I don't really anticipate that to happen this year. And like I mentioned before, our CD funding is based on that formula where the amount available for the next year is based on the revenue in excess of expenses. So on the 3 million that you see in 2023, half the amount is available for CD in 2024. Any unspent amount will be added back to capital as principal to back up the CE guarantees. And our investment income represents about 3.6% return on investments. Moving on to the next slide, if we dig further into our administrative expenses. So in 2024, we spent about 6.6 million in administrative expenses, which is a 12% increase from 2023. A bulk of it is spent on professional and technical services, which include staff, investment management, legal fees, audit fees, banking, custodial fees, insurance, and consulting and other miscellaneous expenses. You can see that there is a 12% increase in the professional fees. That's mostly due to increase in internal capacity. We doubled our staff between 2022 and 2024, and we added some more bodies in 2024, reflecting that increase there. And also related travel activity as we aim to serve across the country and form alliances during 2024. You'll see that the business premises saw a significant decrease there. We downsized our office at the end of our lease in 2024. So that figure is now much lower for 2025 and beyond. Next slide. So Kelly is going to speak more on the capacity development classes. For 2024, CD expenditures were 1.3 million, which is a 40% decrease from 2023. We spent 2.1 million. But we did engage in more commitments to fund CD activities. As you can see, 44 commitments in 2024 versus 37 new commitments in 2023. And we have our outstanding commitments of 1.5 million in 2024 versus 1.3 2023. CD tends to vary year by year. In 2024, we did have a lot of larger project, more expensive, but it is a lot of work for communities and staff. So you can see a decrease in initiatives and participating First Nations. Lastly, we move on to the next slide. Credit enhancement facility, so that is tied to our investment assets. The total maximum amount that represents the total amount that we anticipate based on how many units our First Nations looking to finance at an average cost per. So as of 2024, we had approved under a C program 7,230 units at a total of 1.404 million. Funds guarantee on that amount is 10%, so 104 million. This amount represents about 25% of the investments that we have. The total CE guarantees line, this amount represents the actual intake of CE. So we had 33 new loans that we guaranteed in 2024, total 7.5 or 7.9 million. As of December 2024, we had 566 loans valued at 109 million for a guaranteed amount of 10.9 million. So that's the 10% guarantee that the fund is on the hook for, or 607 home units. But Kelly can expand further on this one. DPNC. That concludes financial update.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So we're gonna go over to Kelly now, who will give an update on some operational, including talking about some of our alliances with other partners.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. First off, I'd like to thank the chair for the opening prayer and started off in a good way. And also like to acknowledge we're on the traditional and unceded territory in Ashbeg Algonquin Nation, and we thank you for allowing us onto your territory. Thank you. My name is Kelly Bitternoes. I am the Director of Programs and Services. I am Cree from George Gordon First Nation in Southern Saskatchewan, Treaty 4 territory. What's going to happen on behalf of the First Nations Market Housing Fund, I want to welcome everyone to the annual general meeting. What I want to do is give you an overview of what the fund has been working through, partnerships with like-minded organizations, and what we're working on, working to assist First Nations and members to pathways to home ownership. You can go to the next slide. What we're going to do is go through a number of partnerships that we have with key initiatives on the fund, and to build and formalize partnerships with like-minded organizations that collaborate approach to central to the fund's reform efforts and reflects its core identity as the First Nations controlled entity. We emphasize the strength of these alliances when highlighting the advantages of First Nations stewardships and fund. We have a number of alliances. I'm just going to go through a few of them that we've signed this over the last couple of years. The first one is First Nations Housing Professional Association. Travis kind of touched. Oh, you can go to the next slide. First Nations Professional Housing Association. Travis kind of touched on it. We signed this MOU with them in January 25th, 2024. The fund and the housing professionals have hosted plenty of regional events throughout the country. We worked with them in highlighting MRP laws and market-based housing. We participate in their national housing conference as well. We pre-workshop sessions, and we last 2 years, 2024, 2025, we hosted two pre-workshop sessions based on highlighting lenders to access for funding for First Nations and First Nations members. Our second MOU is, you can go to the next slide, is First Nations Financial Management Board. This MOU was signed in July 8, 2024 at the AGM in Montreal. The fund and First Nations were successful as Tay mentioned, achieving our financial system certification for nonprofit organization. FMB provides capacity development to support First Nations seeking strengthening their governance and financial practices. The FMB creates examples of good governance, financing practice, and offers certification for these nations, wanting to show that they are following those practices, and the financial certification could benefit the nation in the fund's application process with the fund. Next slide. Lands Advisory Board, this MOU was signed in August 29, 2024. Since this MOU was signed, CEO had several meetings with FNLRC about the joint research projects on ADA leasing, which is ongoing. The consulting firm of Gross Gilroy has been working and researching projects, which entails online surveying as well as virtual meetings and interviews with First Nations that have successfully implemented ADA leasing. And some of the staff at the fund as well has taken knowledge with ADA leasing. The research work is still underway. And the fund attended the virtual AGM in August 27, 28, and delivered, our CEO delivered a presentation to the AGM assembly, which was well taken. Our next one. The other MOU that we signed is with Nutsuma Tribal Council. It was signed in October 23rd, 2024. The fund has been working with the Tribal Council project team on the housing toolkit, updating the project. MNP is selected as a consulting to oversee the engagement with users of the toolkit. The fund has been working with the project team as they use the toolkit as part of their frontline services to assist First Nations with home ownership programs. Research work continues with MNP and Strategies North on updating the housing toolkit to be more user-friendly for First Nation. Working will complete in 4 phases, and with phases 1 and 2 near completion, and 3 and 4 will be next, and this should be completed in 2026. Yanachia. Next one. Next slide. Yanachia Housing Finance. This MOU was signed in December 2024 as well. Trustees passed a resolution to support Yanachia, and the fund is committed to work with Yanachia through IFIs, Indigenous Financial Institutions, on reserve financing. The commitment with the fund can be used to leverage other sources of capital. YHF is working with professional lobbyists to try to secure government funding, supporting prior to federal budget. In September, AFN resolution supported the fund's transfer, and it was supported by Lance Heyman, and it was approved by the annual General Assembly. Once Yanachia secured some funding from the government sources or capital funding, the fund will discuss how our credit enhancement facility can be used through IFIs. So this project is continually ongoing as well. Next one. Human Resources Services. This MOU was signed with in September 2023. Fund staff usually attend quarterly meetings. The last meeting was held in April. 2 organizations have common visions and goals to support First Nation communities and build capacity that promotes Indigenous home ownership. Housing Resource Services is in the interior of BC and works with 33 First Nations in the Okanagan area. So we continue to work with them and see what we can do with those First Nations with their on reserve housing programs. Next slide. Our number of research projects that we started, and we started our lender research project in 2023. The our lender consultant, we hired a retired banker, Stephen Fay, and what this project, we seeked out advice of lenders. We called every lender that are approved by the fund, how the fund can support the environment for their unreserved lending. Management continues to work and improve relationship with lenders. What benefits the fund's capacity development has for lenders, and there's plenty of benefits that we learned through this process in regards to housing policies, land use policies that enable the First Nations to approach lenders for financing. The other project that's still ongoing is the fund has a project with go back. Excited. Compass Board of Canada began working on phase 2 research project that focus on identifying CD initiatives that have most effect for our First Nations that we deal with. For home ownership program, the research was also looked at multiple pathways to home ownership, not just our CE program, types of capacity developments that most appropriate for each pathway. Funds Conference was another project. They looked at 10 First Nations that were successful on reserve housing projects, and what made their success for unreserved housing. So we're in the phase 2 of that project as well. So that we'll have results of that project probably in second quarter of 2026. And our reach. This shows the First Nations that we currently deal with throughout Canada. We deal with roughly 41% of the First Nations. There's 640 First Nations in Canada, so we deal with 41% of them, or roughly 268 First Nations. Getting to this point took many years of presentations, at conferences and visits by our SPO team to communities across Canada. This continues we've also learned that there continues to be a misunderstanding about the future of what the fund actually does. And for this reason, a lot of associations are indifferent to services that the fund offers. And we continue to do a lot of community visits and just to get word of what we do and how we can help their First Nations. Next slide, please. This shows a performance of September the 30th, 2023. Through our capacity development, our credit enhancement program, we have approved 132 First Nations that can approach lenders for home ownership loans when they're ready to go into a lender. We have 223 First Nation approved for capacity development funding, and those are the First Nations that our senior program officers work with to focus them and to lead them towards on-reserve housing programs and to get them prepared to approach lenders. We've had over $32 million in over 1,500 capacity development initiatives, and that's home ownership programs, land use plans, lot surveys, other programs, other initiatives that First Nations approach us with. Our credit enhancement approvals, Tay touched on it as well. We can build up to 7,469 homes over a 5-year period, or we can invest pouring capacity of over $1 billion. To date, we have 627 actual CD homes. And the original target when the fund was started was 25,000 fund-backed homes over a 10-year period. We see now that this target has proven to be unrealistic, and there's a lot of other issues that, trying to do loans on reserve. One of the hindrances is Section 89 of the Indian Act, which doesn't allow banks to take land as security. So we have to come up with other programs, and come up with different on how to have First Nations securitize mortgages on reserve. So these are just a number of thank you for attending, and I'll just turn it back over to Travis.
Thanks, Kelly. So I'm gonna just, this is the last section of our thing, and then we'll go to question and answer. But I wanted to share with the audience our plans for the future, what led to kind of our roadmap for the future. So if you can, I guess I'll just speak to this slide for a second. So as many people are aware, many First Nations people are aware, there's a housing crisis in Canada. The need is greatest for community and social housing. But there's also a vital need for options that enable middle income community members to own their own home rather than wait for or rely on social housing needed by others, or ultimately, in many cases, to actually leave their own community when it's in their benefit to stay in their community. So there is demand for home ownership programs. We strongly believe that. And as I mentioned earlier, in 2022, funded a national survey of First Nation leaders, First Nation administrators, and actual homeowners. And one finding from that was that leaders' input was that 93% of those surveyed believe that a home ownership program is a realistic option to offer in their community. 72% of leaders believe that they should be moving in the direction of offering a home ownership program. So clearly, there was a signal to us, the Market Housing Fund, that we need to continue pushing for home ownership programs and supporting home ownership programs. In that survey, only 18% stated they currently have a home ownership program in place. And the First Nation administrators, similar things, so they verified that about 18 to 20% of First Nations across Canada have a home ownership program in place. So there's a lot, that's a big gap. So they think they see 90% would say it would work in our community, but only 18% actually have it in place. So that huge gap is where the Market Housing Fund can play a role in raising that percentage. More homeownership programs in First Nation communities. Our experience is showing the profound benefits of making homeownership a viable opportunity for interested and eligible community members. And this includes professionals and leaders wishing to stay in the community as others seeking to return, provided there are meaningful housing options for them. Building ownership equity and exercising control over their housing improvements, repairs, maintenance is a key benefit of homeownership in First Nation communities. So in one sense, you can say that lack of housing drives away community members. The opposite is true. You can provide the opportunity for people to own homes in their community. It attracts them, want to work, create businesses, work for their own health facilities and band administrations. You'll attract more of the staying communities. So on the next slide, I'll try to speak briefly about the programs that we currently have in place at the Market Housing Fund. So when the fund was first created, the Inventor Trust provided three mutually complementary program streams. These have stood the test of time with flexibility to adapt and respond to some of the community needs. But it has its limits. There's only so much flexibility we have. The fund's programs can be even more helpful in creating pathways, enhancing conditions for viable home ownership. So we were created with one pathway in mind, and that was credit enhancement facility. Get First Nations to qualify for that facility. And if they don't qualify, invest in capacity development, research projects, consultants, developing policies, procedures, laws, so they would qualify for credit enhancement. And then after they're approved and the program is up and running, to provide other complementary services to raise awareness about that program and actually to work with the actual homeowners to do like credit counseling and financial literacy to increase, make them aware and make them apply for those loans, the credit facility that's available to them. So then the next slide. So this is the current situation of the Market Housing Fund, and it's the way we work right now is one pathway to home ownership. We have the credit enhancement facility. We're trying to establish that in many communities across Canada. But to qualify, we identify there's gaps in capacity. So we invest and we set up we do an assessment and we determine what type of capacity should we be supporting. Do they need a comprehensive community plan? Do they need a home ownership policy? Do they need housing policies? Do they need lot surveys? So we support those types of initiatives to make the environment conducive to having a lending program geared to home ownership, to have that put in place. At the same time, we're trying to attract the lenders to work with the First Nations. So it's working with lenders as well to make them comfortable with the program. The Credit Enhancement Facility Program is a rigorous program of review of the financial strength of a First Nation. We look at 3 pillars: financial management, good governance, and community commitment to home ownership. So, and that's one of the biggest criticisms of the fund is the amount of work that's required to qualify for the Credit Enhancement Facility. The facility is only 10%. It's a pool guarantee, and many First Nations believe that's not, it's not much of an incentive for them to go through all that work to get that credit enhancement. But what I try to tell people is that the real value of that is demonstrating that you are a low risk community. You've got a lot of controls in place and you've got a lot of capacity, and that First Nations should be tripping over themselves to work with your community and offer a homeowner program. At the end of the day, the fund isn't the actual lender. We're a guarantee of the First Nations guarantee. We're not lending money, but we are trying to bring all of the groups together to offer a home ownership program in a community. What we've learned through experience is that even if you build a great program, can you stay in the previous slide, please? Even after you build the program, doesn't guarantee that people are going to actually become borrowers, because they still, like, even if it's available, they don't realize it's available. You'll have turnover of staff, the First Nation. People that are familiar with the Market Housing Fund program are going to move on to other jobs. The bankers, the lenders, the credit unions, same thing. They have turnover of their staff, especially in remote areas. So that's a challenge. That's one of the reasons why it just kind of falls by the wayside. The information isn't out there anymore. So this is the role that the fund needs to play, is to constantly be a re-education of the First Nation that signed up for the fund, a re-education of the lenders that are working with this program, and a re-education of the community members of the benefits of becoming a homeowner. So those are the work, a lot of the work that the fund undertakes to make our program move forward. So we call that aftercare, and for that we have credit enhancement specialists that we provide to the community, and now we have what's called homeownership navigators, which are our own staff now going into the communities and supporting the success of the credit enhancement homeownership program. Go to the next slide. So if we could, after the transfer care control of the Market Housing Fund, we see the future is basically this diagram is the fund providing wraparound services around not just our credit enhancement program, but multiple pathways to home ownership. And so on here, you see like there's 5 boxes, multiple pathways. Right now, the pathway we work with is our credit enhancement program. The First Nation provides guarantees. A second one, and what's happened over the last 15, 16 years, lenders will go into a community and they'll set up a homeownership program. They'll get a guarantee from the First Nation. They don't have to involve the Market Housing Fund. But in those communities, a lot of those communities, we've already invested in building up the capacity. If that's the reality, if we're investing in communities' capacity to offer homeownership and they decide to work with a lender, but not someone that we're working with, we don't think that's a bad thing. Our goal is to increase more homeownership programs and get more people into their own houses. So we want to support that. We want to encourage that. Let's give it the option of the First Nation. What way do they want to work with lenders? Still, in this case, in this option, they still have to provide guarantees. The third option is a new one, a more innovative one. Across Canada, if you're familiar with NACA, they have Indigenous financial institutions. Yanachia Housing Finance is their model is based on delivering housing loans through those Indigenous financial institutions. So and not requiring First Nation guarantees. So it's those IFIs now becoming a delivery agent of money that's raised by Yanachia Housing Finance. We want to support them, and we have been supporting. We've been meeting on a regular basis with them to help them develop that program and launch it. The fourth idea for a pathway to homeownership is leasehold lending, which is A-to-A leasing, which I mentioned earlier. We're doing a research project. It basically allows a community member in a First Nation to set up lease arrangements with the First Nation and to use the value of that lease as the security of a long-term mortgage or a loan. It allows a lot of First Nation individuals who have invested in their own houses on reserve to take out some of the equity, to borrow against that equity using this vehicle, A-to-A leasing. Because sometimes that's one of the reasons why someone doesn't want to invest in owning a house on reserve, is they wouldn't be able to access the equity. So A-to-A leasing might be a vehicle that they could use for that purpose. And a fifth pathway to homeownership would be some communities in the past have established revolving loan funds. As you see across Canada, settlement of land claims or different claims, the First Nation may come into some resources, and they might decide to set aside some of those resources for the purpose of making it possible for a community to offer a homeownership program. And setting up that revolving loan fund has its own risks, and this is where the fund can contribute. The fund has developed the template agreements and has trained First Nation people on how to run a homeownership program, and putting controls in place to make sure that everyone is protected. And so we have the ability to support a revolving loan fund that's custom designed for First Nations, using their own funds that they can then support individuals getting housing loans. So in conclusion, the future of the fund is on, if you think of these as three columns, the fund can provide wraparound service. We can continue to grow and build. The first column, building the foundation for homeownership. Right now it's called capacity development. We're doing a research right now to determine what type of capacity development is needed for these other pathways, other than credit enhancement and loan guarantees. What capacity would work? So that research is underway, and it'll be ready for next year. Hopefully, when that transfer, the care control happens, we've got the research done to revise our CD program to accommodate multiple pathways to homeownership. The second column, this is the benefit of having these partnerships with other organizations, because that's where we get our ideas. By presenting at a lot of conferences, by engaging in First Nations, they tell us, what works in their regions, different regions across Canada. So these ideas come from our own experience, working in this housing field for the last 15, 16 years, but also what we're hearing from our engagement sessions, what are potential other products that we could support. And the third area, which is very important and sometimes overlooked, especially when you hear announcements of new housing programs, is just because you build doesn't mean people are going to use it. And so you need to consider that aftercare service. How are you going to make sure that there's uptake? People are going to use that program. And so we recognize that there's a need for us to grow in that area and further develop services around that, because it's not just our programs, it's other programs too that would benefit from the Market Housing Fund, doing the research and providing best case scenarios, for improving uptake of homeownership. That, I believe that my last slide here, the next one. So our vision for the future, in summary, is to embrace and support multiple pathways to homeownership beyond what we currently do, beyond credit enhancements. New arrangements that some of them will not require bank guarantees. Because we did hear that is sometimes the obstacle itself. A community member might not feel comfortable with sharing their private personal information with their First Nation government. So in that case, they're not even going to consider it. But so this is a good thing that we have as an option, another way of an individual getting a housing loan. Innovation, it's important for us to test the waters and try different things. In 2024, we tried to do a pilot test with down payment assistance, and our government partners said, no, you can't do that. So again, like if we were transferred for care and control, we would try it. You know, you have to try different things to see what works. We are actively doing a lot of research right now, and just trying to be the best organization we can, but also thinking to the future of like what might work in the future. Leveraging financing. So the fund is a trust, well-managed trust, professionally managed. And we want to see if maybe that's one way we can support innovative initiatives, is helping to pledge some of our funds as leverage to help an organization raise capital for housing. Greater awareness of homeownership. So being the advocate for homeownership and telling the story and sharing stories. If you have a chance to take a look at our website, and you'll see some videos, some very moving videos of people that worked all their lives and decided they want to move back to their communities and how they became homeowners. Community readiness and support. Working with groups like Housing Professionals Association helps us to, and Financial Management Board helps us to support the expansion of capacity of communities to do things like this, to promote homeownership, to have homeownership programs. Working with lenders, because they also need assistance in this area. There's turnover of lender individuals, and so we see the role of the fund also being that bridge between lenders and First Nation communities. And then First Nation control, like we want to be another example of successful transfer of the First Nation control. We believe we have our own internal capacity is strong, and we have a good track record. And you know, if we're allowed to do this transfer, I believe that we'll start to see the real potential of the Market Housing Fund. So that's the end of my report. Anyone's question and answer, you can move to the next slide. Be online? No question? Okay. Well, I guess it was just, I answered all the questions. It was that good. No, but I'd like to thank everyone for coming here in person. And like I mentioned, we are going to have our second AGM will happen in the middle of next year. The day is not set yet. Maybe we might do it in alignment with maybe the AFN Special Chiefs Assembly, whatever date that is. Maybe we can do it. So it provides an opportunity for some First Nation people to actually be there in person. So a hybrid situation might work out well for that. So please keep an eye out for the announcement of our next AGM, and keep an eye out for news on hopefully the successful transfer of the fund to First Nation control. That.
Maybe you could
There's some question.
maybe you could explain the process of how to become part of the fund as a community.
Okay, so as to become part of the fund, if you are currently working with the Market Housing Fund, Kelly Bitternoes is our Director of Programs and Services. So he would put you in contact with one of our senior program officers who work across different regions in Canada, and they would walk you through and when they come and do a presentation in the community, they'll they'll make arrangements and present directly to your community. Or you can have virtual meetings leading up to that presentation. But we have regular, we're always open to new First Nations that want to work with the fund. So right now would be a good time because we're in the process of reform and changing and accommodating. So there's going to be more tools in our toolkit, as one of our trustees have said. That's what we're always trying to do, is have multiple tools in our toolkit to support First Nations. So my first advice would go talk to Kelly Bitternose and ask for a visit, and he'll set you up. Yes.
No, I can comment. Is that okay? I came here, one of the reasons I came here to make this trip is because I really wanted to be part of this first AGM, to call it. It's very significant. It's very important. It just shows that this fund belongs not just to the trustees or the staff or to the AFN. It belongs to all the people, First Nations people. That's very significant. And that's, you know, we talk about First Nation control. We have to really truly control the whole process, what we're doing here. So I've lived that experience, and if I can make my comparison, we have our own credit union back home, and I was the very first one there. Now we've been through 37 of them, and we're just thriving because we own it, we control it, we run it, and we got to control this process. Now, there's a lot of things to be done here. You know, the game plan looks very exciting. You know, I like the 5 pillars you mentioned here. I was kind of surprised if you talk about revolving loan funds, and that's very important because I don't want to get too technical here, but the whole aspect of housing, to move to market housing, you have to have developmental financing to move to retail financing. Just like NACA is a developmental lender. It graduates people to go to the banks, the mainstream banks, and that's what we have to do. We have to encourage the people, put skin in the game when you have market housing. Social housing, we're never going to get anywhere with social housing on reserves. We have to, you know, build that discipline. This organization is there to do it. It's provide multiple, like you said, I'm telling people we're a pathways organization. You know, so I'm here because I wanted to see this happen. Finally, yeah. You know, we're on our way now. And you know, next May or June we'll have our next AGM. This is in a fashion. It's like a founding meeting of the First Nation. It's more of that than AGM, but it's good. We did the same thing with our credit union. We had a founding meeting, and then 5 months later we had our first AGM. So this is in a fashion we're doing here. So I just want to point the significance of this here. It's to first, I want to support things where I really want to be is in access to capital and working with the AFI network and finding dollars to put through them to make housing loans. We still work with the mainstream banks. We twist our arms more. We have to. They're so bloody rich, the mainstream banks. It's not funny, you know, and they don't do enough. So we got to make them feel more guilty, and so that's the other pathway. So it's, of course, we still work on capacity building. We got to build up people's, you know, capacity, and people have to want to take responsibility, not just rely on the bank councils. You know, we got to balance that out too as well with, like in my community, we had a robust revolving loan fund, and it was owned by the people. But the problem was we didn't set it up as its own standalone. So it was nationalized by our bank council, unfortunately. They took over the money because it was making so much money. And now our program has been reduced to a social housing program because we didn't have that people control. So it's very important what we do remains with the people. So at large. Anyway, those are my observations. This is a very significant time, more than we think. And I look forward to the next meetings, and you know, you're in the right direction, Travis. You're in the right direction. So I have my support for it. this process.
Okay.
You know, go.
So I also acknowledge that we have several of our trustees are here with us today. I'll open if they want to share any thoughts as well. Oh, is there a question?
Yeah, my apologies. I missed, I don't know how much of the presentation I missed, but I don't know if my questions now were answered in the presentation that I missed. But once the First Nation is on board, who decides who's eligible, like for individuals?
The First Nation will have their own a schedule of like what the criteria is to qualify for that loan guarantee that First Nation provides. So they set the terms, like how much down payment to require, how much, what's the ceilings, how much they can borrow. Those are all things that First Nation with advice from our staff and the lender they're working with provide advice on that. But we have all the templated documents to put that in place.
Okay.
So when you present to the community, are you presenting to, well, obviously chief and council, but then do you present to the community at large so that they all understand what the process is and what it means?
Yeah, exactly. So I talked about wraparound services, and so that is one of the roles of here, Anthony, is our navigator, housing navigator. That's exactly the kind of work he does. It's community presentations to explain what this program's all about, benefits of homeownership, the risks, but many of the opportunities of becoming a homeowner, and how to qualify. So if you're having understanding what credit scores mean, and how to maintain your house, not rely on First Nation, it's not going to take care of your house, but it's your property. And as you, it's something that you're going to be able to pass to your family, your future generations. And if you have to, you can even borrow against it, help you with retirement, trips or vacations or whatever. So there's a lot of pros in that. And that's Anthony's main job. We're going to hire more people like Anthony to do that very thing.
And then is part of is financial literacy part of, yeah, okay.
I'd like to raise a point. The trend we're seeing out there is not for one or two projects. Communities are getting their back against the wall. We're looking for subdivisions. How can the fund support subdivisions? It's all over the country. They're getting to the point where they need 30, 40 houses, not two. So how do we get behind that? I'll leave that.
I can kind of speak to that a little bit. When we talk about alliances with other like-minded organizations, there are few that are focused on First Nation infrastructure, like First Nation Infrastructure Institute. We have talks with them and other groups too, that their job is to help First Nation get into that. If there's a way that the fund can support the some of the planning and the research that goes around applying for funds to pay for the infrastructure, maybe that's an area we're open to talking with them about. Because a lot of them don't necessarily have the dollars to pay for the work that needs to be put in place. So maybe that's someplace we can support. Yes. If it's going to lead to homeownership, there's a linkage to homeownership. Definitely be open to that.
They're asking more and more for that type of support from the fund, but presently we're not providing on the infrastructures. And we don't have any answers for them. And that's what gets me, because the communities go, okay, we're ready to build with you guys, but we need infrastructure. So we need someone we can bring in with us and say, okay, here's the guy to talk to. It's going to take you 2 years to get in line, to get major capital. It's the process, it's economic development.
So it's a perfect example of the limitations that's put on the fund, what we can and can't do. If we were transferred to First Nation control, we'd have that flexibility. That's what the need is out there, right? We'd be able to respond to that need by some type of support. Kelly?
Oh, just I have a comment just to that. Build Canada Homes. you know, and they're doing big projects like that. I know Travis has asked for a meeting with the head, but we haven't got an answer yet, so maybe we can work something out with them, or because they're into big projects like that off reserve. They haven't really indicated whether they're gonna do anything on reserve, so maybe we can come up with some kind of initiative, something like that, and talk to them. You know, work with them and with their project as well too, their program, so.
And also, that what was in the budget was what Ernie Daniels was pushing from the finance secretary was monetization of transfer payments. That could open the door for First Nations to access the capital needed to build up their infrastructure. So I think that was a big announcement in the budget. And as far as sharing information, I think the Mark Housing Fund could be a link to that information to our website, because it's all related. Ultimately, it's the housing and home ownership. It's something you should look into. Well, there's lots of food. You'll help yourself to the food, and I'll stick around here. If there's any more questions, you can come later. Thanks again to Jonah and Nancy for setting this up, and AFN offices for allowing us to have this meeting in their office, and for all the trustees that were able to join us today. Thank you very much.